13:32 Moscow time, a quiet night over southern Crimea was shattered by a sudden blinding flash. Observers would later describe the scene as a textbook example of how modern warfare is evolving not through brute force, but through precision timing and psychological manipulation. The target was the heavily secured sanatorium complex along the southern Crimean coast, a site under the watchful eye of multi-layered Russian defenses valued in the billions. And yet within seconds, the facility experienced a heat surge above 2,000 degrees Celsius and a pressure wave that rattled reinforced glass across nearly 100 meters. Cameras and surveillance feeds flickered and went dark, creating the illusion of chaos. But this was no traditional missile strike. Small FPV drones, each under 20 kilograms, accelerated at speeds below 190 kilometers per hour, exploiting gaps in the defense systems designed for much larger aircraft and cruise missiles. Coastal radars expecting conventional threats initially detected nothing unusual, interpreting the signatures as harmless sea clutter. Hidden in plain sight, the drone's approach exploited timing and terrain, manipulating operators' perceptions. The first explosion was brief, yet devastating enough to force a momentary recalibration of automated defenses, a minor tremor that set the stage for the more decisive actions to come. This opening salvo demonstrates a critical shift in modern conflict. Smaller, cheaper, and highly agile systems can generate disproportionate effects, especially when intelligence and deception are integrated into planning. Military analysts note that Ukraine's growing expertise in FPV drone swarms illustrates a broader trend in asymmetrical warfare, forcing nations like Russia to reconsider static coastal and urban defense networks. Western defense experts warn that this kind of precision raid, though seemingly limited in scale, can create ripple effects across military readiness, logistics, and regional morale. For NATO and US observers, the implications are immediate. Even fortified sites can be destabilized through coordinated low-signature attacks, underlining the urgency for updating layered air defense systems. Energy infrastructure command centers and industrial hubs are all vulnerable to such hybrid assaults, which combine physical damage with electronic and psychological disruption. Experts from Defense News and Jane's Defense Weekly highlight that similar tactics are being studied globally as they offer cost-effective ways to challenge heavier conventional forces. The immediate question for viewers is clear. How does a network designed to intercept jets and missiles fail against a fleet of drones weighing less than a small car? The answer lies in the orchestration, timing, and multi-vector deception employed, where every false signal pulls resources in the wrong direction, creating windows of vulnerability. By the time Russian operators realized the severity, the first wave had already achieved its objective: disruption, confusion, and the opening for the main assault. The scene over Crimea that night illustrates not just a tactical strike, but a paradigm shift in warfare, where intelligence, small-scale precision, and timing redefine what it means to be strategically dominant. As this operation unfolded, Western analysts warned that lessons learned here could influence NATO defensive planning across Europe, particularly in energy-rich and industrially critical regions. Yet the night was far from over. The initial explosions were only the beginning. As the initial strike sowed confusion along the southern Crimean coast, the Magura Vivi-5 drone boat advanced quietly through the Black Sea. Traveling at 24 knots, its radar signature was minimal, making it almost invisible to conventional coastal monitoring systems. This vessel carried the next phase of the operation, a coordinated swarm of FPV drones, each equipped with precisely calibrated payloads. Unlike conventional strikes, this approach emphasized deception and choreography over raw explosive power, exploiting weaknesses in automated tracking and human reaction times. Within seconds, 6 OSA FPV drones were launched, each gliding almost silently above the water before ascending to strike positions. Their electric motors were nearly imperceptible, and their small size allowed them to appear as insignificant blips on radar, effectively masking their true threat. The first drones deployed aluminum chaff-thin strips that reflected radar and created the illusion of a single larger and faster airborne threat. Russian air defense systems, including the nearby Pantsir S-1 battery, detected the anomaly immediately and responded exactly as programmed. A missile was fired at what appeared to be the main threat, detonating mid-air in a brilliant flash. From the perspective of Russian operators, the engagement seemed successful, reinforcing confidence that the initial incursion had been neutralized. Yet in reality, this was a carefully orchestrated feint. While attention and resources were drawn to the decoy, the remaining drones maneuvered close to the Foros cliffs, exploiting radar shadows and flying at altitudes below 15 feet. These drones were invisible to conventional detection, a ghostly advance that turned the defensive perimeter into a predictable funnel for the main assault. Western analysts note that such tactics are redefining coastal and urban defense strategies. Dr. Michael O'Hanlon of the Brookings Institution points out that swarms like this leverage timing and electronic misdirection, allowing lightly armed systems to overwhelm even highly sophisticated defenses. The operation demonstrates the effectiveness of combining low-cost drones with advanced electronic countermeasures, a model that NATO countries are now studying for both defensive and offensive purposes. Al Jazeera and defense news correspondents highlight that this method is particularly effective against aging or siloed radar and missile networks, which were originally designed for conventional singular targets. The strategic implication for the West is twofold. First, it underscores that even heavily fortified sites, such as critical infrastructure or command facilities, can be temporarily neutralized without massed firepower. Second, it demonstrates that hybrid approaches combining kinetic strikes with electronic deception can magnify effects far beyond the individual weapon's capability. Energy grids, coastal radar installations, and logistics hubs remain particularly vulnerable to such tactics, forcing NATO to rethink layered air defense and early warning protocols. For the audience, if a single small vessel can release a swarm that bypasses top-tier defenses, how vulnerable are other high-value military and industrial sites in Europe and beyond? This moment also sets the stage for the next sequence. The drones, now positioned and undetected, are ready to strike their primary targets with precision, exploiting the chaos they have orchestrated. At 1932 Moscow time, the first major impact revealed the true scale of the operation. An OSA FPV drone surged out of the radar shadow at the base of the Foros cliffs, climbing sharply for less than 2 seconds before striking the central structure of Sanatorium number 40. The detonation was instantaneous and overwhelming. Internal sensors recorded temperatures spiking above 1900 degrees Celsius, while shock waves propagated through steel supports and reinforced glass, fracturing them outward. Fire suppression systems were immediately overwhelmed, and debris scattered across corridors and exterior areas within seconds. The initial explosion, previously considered a minor probing strike, now exposed the vulnerability of even heavily fortified installations. Automated systems hesitated, overwhelmed by the speed and multiplicity of the attack vectors. Defensive operators scrambled, but by the time the first defensive response, Pantsir S-1 batteries firing 30mm rounds engaged, the drones had already moved to secondary targets, maintaining momentum with precise autonomous adjustments. The complexity of the engagement forced Russian operators into a reactive stance. Su-30 fighters scrambled from nearby airfields' engines, screaming as they reached supersonic speeds. Yet even the high-speed interceptors struggled to detect the drones, whose movements were calculated to exploit radar gaps, altitude shadows, and the environmental clutter of smoke, chaff, and terrain. The drone's autonomy and small radar cross-section made continuous tracking nearly impossible. Each drone adjusted in real time to threats, demonstrating a level of tactical sophistication that challenges traditional assumptions of air superiority. Experts from Defense News describe this as a textbook example of attrition by confusion, where a highly agile small-scale force forces a superior opponent to expend resources ineffectively. Beyond kinetic damage, the operation delivered strategic consequences. Power lines and surveillance nodes were severed, causing temporary blind spots across the compound. Analysts from BBC News highlight that such targeted strikes, though individually small, create systemic disruptions, delaying command and control and compromising readiness for subsequent waves. Western military advisors note that these engagements have a cascading effect. Even brief interruptions can force a nation to divert high-value resources, reroute logistics, and reallocate defensive assets, creating opportunity costs that ripple through multiple operational domains. The operation also underscored the economic implications of modern asymmetric warfare, Sanatorium Number 40 was not just a symbolic or military site. It functioned as a logistical support hub and contained infrastructure critical for the southern Crimea region. Damage to such a facility represents both immediate repair costs and broader operational delays, an illustration of how precision drone strikes can generate outsized economic consequences with minimal manpower and expenditure. Jane's Defense Weekly emphasizes that this approach is likely to become a preferred model in conflicts where one side must maximize effect with limited resources. For the audience, how can a small drone seemingly insignificant force a multi-billion-dollar defensive network into chaos and create long-term economic disruption? The answer lies in orchestration timing and exploitation of technological and human limitations, a theme that will intensify as the next wave of drones pushes deeper into the compound. As the first strikes unfolded, Russian defenses escalated their response, signaling the beginning of an intense attritional phase. Pantsir S-1 batteries shifted fully into engagement mode, opening 30mm cannon fire along predicted approach corridors, while radar operators attempted to track multiple moving targets simultaneously. Spetsnaz teams deployed along the elevated perimeter, firing into fleeting thermal signatures and attempting to intercept drones with kinetic nets. Despite these efforts, the attackers demonstrated remarkable adaptability. Remaining OSA FPV drones split their flight profiles. Some descended below 10 feet, merging with wave clutter, while others climbed toward 200 feet to force dividing attention among air defenses. Each drone adjusted its trajectory in real time, compensating for environmental disruptions, including wind gusts, surpassing 20 knots, thermal distortion from burning structures, and residual chaff from earlier deployments. This constant adjustment rendered Russian firing solutions increasingly disjointed and reactive rather than predictive. Western defense analysts have highlighted the effectiveness of such swarm tactics as a model of asymmetrical warfare optimized for disruption. According to defense news, operations like this strain not only physical defenses, but also cognitive and logistical systems, forcing commanders into rapid, high-stakes decision-making under uncertainty. NATO observers have noted that this scenario exposes critical vulnerabilities in coastal defense networks, especially in the Black Sea region, where energy infrastructure, military outposts, and industrial facilities are concentrated. The drone's ability to force misallocation of resources illustrates an opportunity cost that goes beyond immediate damage, creating strategic pressure that can ripple through supply chains, operational readiness, and morale. The aerial environment became increasingly complex as Russian Su-30 fighters attempted to intercept targets. Afterburners cut twin trails of flame across the night sky, yet radar sweeps repeatedly lost the small, agile drones. Command channels filled with overlapping calls, priority lists updated in real time, and automated tracking systems struggled to maintain continuous locks. Each delay, each misaligned firing solution amplified the efficiency of the drone swarm. Military Watch magazine notes that small unmanned systems, when deployed in coordinated waves, can achieve disproportionate effect against high-value targets without requiring significant manpower or cost. An evolution of modern conflict that challenges assumptions about the supremacy of high-speed aircraft and missile batteries. Strategically, the attritional phase also demonstrated the psychological and operational impact on the defenders. The defenders' perception of control was continuously challenged, causing stress and hesitation that extended beyond the immediate engagement. Western experts emphasize that the operational tempo created by autonomous drones can effectively compress decision-making windows, forcing costly errors, even in technologically sophisticated militaries. The combination of kinetic strikes, electronic deception, and terrain exploitation underscores how hybrid approaches can maximize effectiveness while minimizing exposure. For the audience, if a few dozen drones can degrade a heavily defended site while consuming minimal resources, how might this reshape future NATO and US defensive planning? The question sets the stage for the next phase, where electronic warfare and precision navigation take the operation into the final decisive moments. By 1934, Moscow time, the battle shifted from traditional firepower to control and precision, marking the critical phase where electronic warfare became decisive. Russian commanders authorized a full-spectrum electronic blanket over the coastal sector, flooding nearly 8 kilometers of airspace, with interference designed to disrupt navigation and communication links. Screens filled with static and signal confidence dropped sharply. This environment temporarily challenged the remaining FPV drones, but their autonomous systems compensated using inertial navigation, tracking every roll, pitch, and acceleration with extraordinary precision. Course deviations remained under 3%, even as turbulence and wind gusts exceeded 22 knots. Physics, not signals, now governed their trajectory. The operation highlighted the convergence of kinetic, electronic, and timing-based warfare, where the attacker's success relied less on explosive power and more on exploiting system vulnerabilities. Drones adjusted their electronic footprints to briefly appear as non-threats, buying critical seconds, while operators struggled to reclassify targets. Western analysts note that such tactics underscore the limits of legacy air defense networks when confronted with agile autonomous systems. Defense news experts point out that inertial navigation combined with real-time environmental adaptation allows drones to circumvent electronic countermeasures, demonstrating a paradigm shift in operational design. The strategic implications are significant. NATO observers warn that integrated defense networks, even when layered and modernized, can be stressed by highly coordinated small-scale attacks that manipulate timing and sensors. Jane's Defense Weekly emphasizes that critical energy communication and logistics hubs are particularly vulnerable. A successful assault could force reallocation of resources and expose other assets to secondary risks. By controlling the electronic environment, attackers can compress reaction windows and create cascading operational effects, potentially influencing the tempo of wider regional conflicts. Within seconds, 4 OSA FPV drones converged from different angles on their targets. Defensive fire intensified, but the drones' trajectories had already been locked with millimeter-level precision. Each separated its shaped charge payload in rapid succession. The first breach overwhelmed the main hall. Roof temperatures spiked beyond 200 degrees Celsius, and internal structures collapsed in milliseconds. Subsequent strikes targeted service wings, vehicle bays, and command centers, disrupting critical infrastructure and severing communications. Even as defensive units continued firing, the operation's timing ensured that the drones completed their objectives undisturbed. For viewers, how can small, low-cost autonomous systems outperform multi-million-dollar air defenses through timing, navigation, and electronic manipulation? The answer illustrates a fundamental evolution in warfare, where intelligence, coordination, and real-time adaptation may matter more than raw firepower. The consequences extend beyond Crimea, providing NATO and U.S. defense planners with urgent lessons on vulnerabilities, rapid response strategies, and the potential for asymmetrical escalation in regional theaters. At 1935 Moscow time, the final phase of the operation compressed into a matter of seconds, culminating in precision destruction that demonstrated the strategic power of timing, coordination, and technological innovation. 4 OSA FPV drones emerged almost simultaneously from smoke, chaff, and sea clutter, converging on key structures within the sanatorium complex. Defensive fire, though intense, had already been manipulated and diverted by prior waves. The drones adjusted their flight paths within fractions of a degree, closing at speeds exceeding 180 kilometers per hour. Shaped charges separated at precisely calculated intervals, striking the main hall, auxiliary wings, vehicle bays, and command centers. Temperatures at impact points exceeded 2,200 degrees Celsius. Steel supports twisted, reinforced glass, shattered, and critical communication nodes went offline. The combined effect was instantaneous, leaving the facility incapacitated and the surrounding area disrupted for hours. This operation underscored a key lesson in modern conflict. Small, inexpensive, and highly maneuverable systems can inflict disproportionate damage on high-value targets when combined with deception and timing. Western defense analysts highlight that this engagement reflects a shift toward hybrid warfare, where intelligence, misdirection, and multi-vector attacks create strategic leverage beyond physical destruction. NATO observers note that attacks like this carry implications far beyond Crimea, particularly for energy infrastructure, command centers, and industrial hubs in Europe and the Black Sea region. By forcing misallocation of defensive resources, The operation imposed operational and economic costs, far exceeding the drone's material value. Moreover, the engagement illustrates the intersection of kinetic and electronic warfare. The drone's ability to transition from guided to inertial navigation under active electronic jamming demonstrates resilience against even advanced countermeasures. Military Watch magazine points out that this capability challenges traditional assumptions about the invulnerability of integrated air defense networks. For the United States and NATO, the strike provides a stark reminder of the vulnerability of high-value assets and the need for adaptive defense strategies capable of addressing asymmetric threats. As dawn broke over the Black Sea, the scene revealed a new paradigm in operational warfare, decisive outcomes achieved through orchestration timing and technological precision, rather than overwhelming force. This single night illustrated how a small fleet of drones could redraw tactical and strategic balances, forcing major powers to reconsider both defensive postures and infrastructure hardening. For the audience, what does this attack reveal about the future of warfare? And how should NATO and allied forces adapt to a world where small, precise, and agile systems can disrupt massive defenses? The lesson is clear. The era of attritional brute force strategies is evolving, and intelligence-driven precision operations are redefining global military planning. The drone strike on southern Crimea exemplifies a transformative moment in modern warfare. Across 6 minutes, small FPV drones launched from the Magura V-5 vessel bypassed sophisticated Russian air defenses, exploited timing gaps, and struck multiple high-value targets within the Sanatorium No. 40 complex. The operation combined kinetic impact, electronic deception, and real-time autonomous navigation, overwhelming radar missile batteries and ground teams. Defensive systems including Pantsir S-1 units and Su-30 fighters responded with precision, but were consistently forced into reactive measures, illustrating how timing and coordination can outweigh sheer firepower. The attack not only inflicted structural damage, but also caused temporary power and communications failures, demonstrating the potential economic and operational costs of such precision strikes. Strategically, the engagement highlights vulnerabilities in coastal and industrial defense networks, emphasizing lessons for NATO, the United States, and European partners. Experts from Defense News, Janes and Western Military Analysis stress that hybrid tactics combining drones, electronic warfare, and deception can disrupt high-value targets at minimal cost, forcing nations to reconsider layered defenses, early warning systems, and rapid response protocols. The implications extend beyond Crimea, signaling a future where small, agile systems can shape battlefield outcomes and influence broader strategic calculations. As a forecast, such operations are likely to increase in scale and frequency, with hybrid forces employing autonomous drones against infrastructure, energy networks, and command centers. NATO and allied forces must adapt by enhancing detection coordination and rapid interception capabilities. Audience question: how should global powers defend against small, precise systems capable of undermining massive defenses? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth analyses of modern conflicts and emerging military technologies.